Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I know something, 4chan. I know something that I should not know, and it is a long story to tell. So I hope you have some time to sit down and hear it as I type it up now. There is an ancient history concerning Vourdalakas, the vampires. I have come across this history by an unfortunate accident. My heritage is white European and Middle Eastern, while my face is red when slapped and my skin pale, like the very blonde hair I had as a child before it darkened to brown. I hold a Hebrew first name and a last name that originates from Persian. The reason for this goes back to the time of the Crusades under the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. There was a Templar unit known as Ordo Militaris et Hospitalis Sancti Lazari Hierosolimitani, the military and hospitaller order of St. Lazarus of Jerusalem. This order of chivalry was originally a hospital created to treat those ill with leprosy. Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, known as the leper, had a strong connection to our temple. As we know from biblical history, Lazarus was the man raised from the dead by Christ. But the reason that this order had taken on the name of Lazarus is far more sinister than you could possibly imagine. 2 months ago, I had discovered a tremendously important part of history, stashed away in a private garage I had inherited from my grandfather. Stuffed between various vehicle manuals, I thought not much of the dusty book, which had every name of my heritage written down since the early 1000s. It all makes sense now. My name, Raziel, comes from the Hebrew, meaning the keeper of secrets. It is only appropriate that I happen to come across this writing, which I shall not share, will not share, but only briefly touch upon its contents here. After this, I will be on my own journey to Masyaf, Syria, where the last of my true order is waiting for me. I thank you guys for all the years you have supported me. I owe you an explanation as to why I must leave. The Order of St. Lazarus would eventually become militarized during the Second Crusade. Before, we were merely a hospital. The Green Cross became synonymous with healthcare, and Lazaret is the name for hospitals in many languages and countries. But with Saladin's army rapidly approaching, drastic times called for the most drastic of measures. Imagine an army of lepers, their bodies rotting, their lives soon to end. They have suddenly been blessed and given nightly duties to serve God. It was empowering, as it was also the first form of biological warfare. When Muslim fighters encountered the Lazaret Knights, they thought they were staring into the eyes of jinn. They were fearless monsters. Some speculated that the Christians had contacted sorcerers to bring back the dead to fight for them. If a Muslim fighting for Saladin managed to survive an encounter from the jinn order, they would soon fall ill to leprosy as well. This tactical damage was a surprising feat of trickery and misuse, at least so it seemed. But to the true Knights of Lazarus, this was the bidding of their true master. The order, to the eyes of the Crusaders and even Baldwin himself, believed these Templars were only of two creeds: to treat the lepers and defend the Christian faith. But the founder of the order was much like Lazarus himself, but he was not brought back by God, but instead the devil. The true founder was a man named Abu al-Kir. He had defected from the Muslim Caliphate to join the Christians. At first, they suspected him to be a double agent, until it was evident he was suffering from early-stage leprosy. Seeing his urge to create a temple to help treat the ill as legitimate, his wish was granted, and he gave it a name fitting of his own tastes. Before arriving to the Christian-controlled Jerusalem, Abu deserted his fellow man to visit a pagan shrine he had discovered as a child, an ancient work of stone, carved to emulate the deity of Baal. Something called to him. It grasped his very soul, and soon his worship became more and more deranged. According to these texts I have discovered, Abu began bringing people from his Damascus to sacrifice to Baal. It is believed that he who sacrifices to Baal will have prosperity. Abu, instead, contacted leprosy from one of his many victims. Angry and upset, he set forth and planned his revenge against the God that wronged him. He pledged allegiance to the Christian God and Christ. But as his leprosy grew worse, he realized that Baal had indeed gifted him in one way or another. on his way to the chosen land to find refuge from those who considered him a heathen, a heretic, and an infidel, Abu's appetite for blood grew strong. After his excitement from Damascus, he was forced to travel by foot and without any sense of direction. Soon they started to feed on livestock, and it elevated to attacks on children. People started to tell stories of a jinn who lived in the desert, by the pagan walls of Baal. Some even speculated he had carved a cave behind the structure of worship to call it his home. Abu haunted the villages, and soon Muslim fighters went out searching for him. These men would unknowingly become the first vampire hunters of that century. They sought out Abu and cornered him on his way to Jerusalem. Calling him a demon, they yelled that Allah is good, in hopes of invoking the evil inside of him. Nearby crusaders, who mistook this as an unjustified attack, came in and quickly dispatched Saladin's hunters. Abu feigned his innocence and claimed that they came for him after he converted to Christianity. After being baptized, Al-Kir was suddenly a member of the community like everyone else, and an important asset to the war effort. Things looked up for him, until his health once again took another sudden dip. He vomited blood against the church wall in the evening, the same that he had been drinking from the local poor. Soon his throat grew tight and his eyes withered into their sockets. His body trembled with every step, and Abu collapsed on the steps of a recently desecrated mosque. Baal came to him and gave him life again, to perhaps further prolong the suffering of his once faithful student. Abu was ashamed and sought out death, but soon, after the founding of the order, he found a better way to live than a better way to die. With his resurrection, he was given the ability to grant immortality to anyone he fed upon. This so happened to be the lepers, who pledged their allegiance to him and eventually, Baal, that Abu came to re-accept into his life. Then Raziel stopped posting and seemingly went on his journey.
1. The Vourdalak. The Vourdalak are something in the middle between a vampire aka Yujör and the Arabic ghoul. These creatures are vampiric, there is no doubt in it, but they enjoy devouring flesh of the dead and gnawing bones as well. So we can say that they are both vampires and ghouls. The Vourdalak are considered to be undead, not cursed humans or monsters. They are corpses which have risen from their graves to prey on the living. Unlike the Yujör, the Vourdalak are not so repulsive. They resemble themselves when alive, just much more pale, skinny, and having large dark pouches under their eyes. They have long, clingy fingers ending with claws which help them to dig graves and grab their victims by the throats easier. Some legends say them to have sharp teeth, some say they do not, but instead they have teeth of iron and incredibly strong jaws that allow them to literally rip their victims' throats and bite even through armor and shields. They are much stronger than they seem. Thieves, rogues, gypsies, sorry if you are one, legends are legends, or those who were born with membrane fatalis on their face were considered to be able to turn into Vourdalak after their death. However, they can be defeated. Unlike the Yujör, the Vourdalak do burn in the sunlight and have to hunt only in the night. A rooster's crowing is a way to frighten them. To distract them, you have to throw a lot of seeds on the ground. The Vourdalak have a passion for counting things, sort of OCD. So the creature will not go on pursuing you unless it finishes counting all of them, and there the dawn catches it, and it shall burn in the sunlight. Don't forget the stake. 2. The Yujör. These guys, the Yujör, are the toughest branch of all the vampiric families on Earth, trust me. They belong to Sakha Republic, Yakutia, which is in eastern Siberia. This land is hell on Earth. The lowest temperature officially registered here was almost negative 77.8 degrees. Negative 108 for Fahrenheit, guys. The land makes its vampires, you know. Before speaking about the Yujör, I have to mention the Abasi Yakutian demons, evil spirits. They are said to be responsible for all the necromantic things going on in this land. Local shamans and sorcerers are said to be able to deal with them and make them go away. But sometimes it does not help. They bring pestilence, famine, make people lose their path in thick forests and swamps, and kidnap their souls. They are responsible for creating the Yujör, who are vampire-like, and the Dretnik, who are actually zombies. The Yujör are a mix of a vampire and a werewolf. They have features of both. I'm not talking about the UPR or the Vrikolak because they are creatures of Slavic mythology, and Yakuts are Asian and their culture differs greatly from the Slavic one, so the Yujör somewhat remind of Western vampires and werewolves. but at the same time remind of nothing. First, they are corpses of former fellows de se and criminals possessed by the abbacy. At night they hunt, seeking for human blood. At daytime they rest. Guess where they sleep? Soil? Nay, permafrost. Caves and holes in the ground? No, there aren't too many in Saka. Underwater vampires. At daytime the Yujör sleep underwater. At night they hunt. To deceive their victims, they take normal human appearance and ask owners of yurts for a night shelter. As soon as they are let in, what a parallel, eh? As soon as they are given an invitation, they take their real appearance. They look like a mix of a werewolf and a vampire, a hairy, Wendigo-like monster with extreme physique. They have long claws and fangs. Their strength is monstrous, truly demonic. What is really scary? They are truly immortal, truly. You cannot kill such a creature. There are no ways of defeating them. Crosses, silver, garlic will not help you. They are for Christians, and this creature is of traditional Yakut mythology and beliefs. Guns, knives, bolts, and arrows. It will only laugh at you before sucking you dry and ripping you apart. You cannot kill it. The only way to rescue your life is to wound the Yujör strong enough to make it retreat with pain and shock. Hit it between the eyes with a jackhammer. Stab it with a red-hot poker in the eye. Only then you're alive. It will not die unless the abbacy by whom it is possessed leave its body. Then the Yakutian vampire will self-destruct immediately. Only a real shaman, not many are left today, can make the abbacy go away.
We have always been, and always will be. But you need to forget the whole undead evil idea. That was never really the truth. The term vampire is a misnomer. We simply have a need beyond normal needs. Some people have done great work collecting stories, tracing back their origins, etc. in recent years to come to a better understanding, but it still ends up colored with a modern lens that doesn't really reflect reality. The basics of it are that every culture has stories of those who feed on the life forces of their fellows. European cultures most prominently feature those who literally require blood, with a lot of religious elements added during the Christian era, while Asian cultures more commonly feature those who are some kind of sorcerer feeding off of the prana or chi of others, often necromantic in both cases. You have to understand that a lot of concepts and words mean different things in the public consciousness of the modern world than they did just a few hundred years ago, let alone thousands. There isn't too much to say. The real-life version of vampires are largely normal mortal people with something more or less supernatural that is missing. Consensus seems to be that either we can't maintain our own spiritual energy properly, or we need to consume blood for some reason. Personally, I feed both on blood and energy, though I rather dislike the existing terms. Prana is probably the most appropriate term. Suffice it to say that I'm extremely psychically sensitive, and if I do not routinely take in the life energies of others, I have a lot of health problems that get worse. The last time I fed directly on blood was a few years ago, but I try to make a habit of connecting with the elements to take in energies. And I also feed on the surface level energies of passengers while on public transit.
I believe there are immaterial organs, if you will, that when bound, atrophied or otherwise dysfunctional lead to this effect as well. I'm not sure if it is directly or indirectly related, but in my own journey in life I have on some occasions had vision-like dreams that demonstrated some beings subject to some harm. In one case it was a womb-like organ, in the other it was an energy source of sorts. The connotation was that this would cause impairments for the being, lacking the ability to produce offspring in one and manage energy levels in the other. In both cases I was observing and called out when it went too far. I could feel what they felt to some degree. They felt to me like coordinated efforts. So it's not unlikely that some vampiric beings were once dealt a similar hand of fate. I do know that one of those two cases was restored at some point, so it's not irreversible. With a lot of knowledge of the higher life lost, it's unsurprising that for some this affliction just remains around indefinitely, or you find a way to live with it and keep it around as a strength rather than an impairment. In any case, I often found this topic to carry two currents of energy. One is the one of tropes and the typical energy vampire thing that was previously mentioned. It carries this usually negative context of exploitation. It feels like a warped reflection. Not to say negative energy suckers don't exist, but they appear and feel distinct from the other current. The other's a more obscured variant, one that speaks more of building up things over multiple lifetimes, redistributing, manipulating and balancing the subtle energies of groups of people and dealing with the unconscious. The people dealing with the latter have a sort of vibe that's very authentic. I don't know how to describe it. It's more about removing excesses and turning decay into new growth.
Hello/X/ It's been a while since I've visited this board, but I have a serious metaphysical issue that I have been trying to deal with. I made friends with a narcissist about a year ago. I noticed that every time I spent time with him I felt completely drained. I didn't think much of this until just recently when his true colors started to show. So I decided to cut him off completely. This did not go down well. He eventually placed a tracker on my vehicle and started breaking into my car. I eventually caught on to the fact that it was him, and I called him out on it. He of course denied this despite video proof. Video quality was poor, so I couldn't go to police. As a result of this, I completely blocked him on social media and cut him off from my life completely. Ever since I have done this, I have been having severe insomnia. I can feel immense pain in my neck and groin. Every time I am about to go to sleep, it's like I am getting stabbed by something. I can't help but feel like he is somehow stealing my energy without being near me. Over the course of the friendship, he did many peculiar things. I think he somehow put some sort of bed on me so that he can continue to steal my energy without being near me. What should I do/X/? I am seriously concerned about this. I have been reciting the Psalms daily and have been listening to exorcism prayers while trying to go to sleep. Nothing seems to work. I cannot seem to go to sleep anymore. I am worried that I will go mad if I don't get some rest soon. This is the second day of barely any sleep.
Stop thinking about him. You are perpetuating the energetic link. Fast for a couple days and over-exercise, be as distracted as possible. Get into a new game or hobby. If you still feel like shit a week later, and honestly haven't thought about this much or obsessed about it at all, then consider external help.
A vampire sent me a paper airplane. This happened a couple years back, but I still think about it sometimes. Be me. Weather is getting nicer where I am, so I decided to go around with some pals outside. Kind of roaming around the forest at the edge of town where there are some houses, but not really that many. Walk past this rundown 2-story house with a super overgrown yard. My friends and I are being generally loud and obnoxious and laughing about dumb stuff. Out of the corner of my eye I see something fly towards the edge of the yard by some weeds. Look towards the house on instinct and see a scrawny-looking pale kid for a split second until someone throws a blanket over him at lightning speed and yanks him back inside. WTF.jpg. Honestly, I figure it's crackheads, but I take whatever he throws anyway. It's a paper airplane. Read it when I get home. It's a message basically asking me to come back and hang out that night. On some whim or maybe out of sheer mind-numbing suburban boredom, I decide to do it, cause why not? Famous last words. I head back to the house around midnight. Lights are on. Knock on the door. The door opens immediately like someone was waiting there already. Get a good look at who's inside. Tall, kinda emaciated looking kid. Looked around my age, I'm 18, but somehow haggard. Long, unkempt hair and these massive bug eyes that seem to rarely ever blink. Looked like he never slept. He had pronounced circles under his eyes. He tells me he and his brother were just fooling around in this sort of high-pitched childlike cadence, which immediately strikes me as eerie. He asks where all my friends went. I notice the house is full of Christmas decorations for some reason, which distracts me, and so I respond by asking what's up with that. He looks back like he forgot they were there and says it's because Christmas was a couple days ago. It's April. I say, dude, it's April. He kinda brushes that off and just asks if I want to come in. I'm mildly intrigued, and he's so scrawny. I figure if things go south I can take him, so I come inside. House seems pretty normal, if not dilapidated, but has a stinging cleaning fluid smell. Once I'm inside, he explains to me that his parents give him gifts every month, which I'm actually kinda jealous of because my parents don't care. I ask him if he went to my school and he says no and tells me he's homeschooled. I ask him if he's sick and if that's why he can't go outside or go to school. He gets very quiet and starts itching over to this organ I think he has in the living room. I sense that it might be a sore spot because of the silence, so I just tell him I haven't met many homeschooled kids and public school sucks anyway. He stares back at me with this freaky wide smile for like 2 beats too long. Asks if I want to play a game and pats the bench to the organ telling me to sit. I say okay, sure, and sit down. He tells me that the game is that he'll play a song and then I have to tell him what year it's written. Demands that I put my hands up and away from the keys for some reason, says it's part of the game. Plays some spooky old-sounding organ music while I sit awkwardly. Tell him I have no clue when it was written, not really my area of expertise. He lets it go but seems kinda dejected and I almost feel bad. We go to the kitchen and he offers me a drink out of this industrial-looking tin bucket that has a faucet attached. Whatever's in it is viscous and looks almost black. He pours some in a cup and holds it out to me expectantly, like he's holding out a glass of water or some orange juice or something. I ask what it is and he tells me to try it. I take the cup and examine it for a second and all I really remember is being hit with this whiff of what smelled like 100 old pennies that had been lying at the bottom of a public well for decades. I don't drink it, obviously. I tell him it's late and I really have to go home. He pauses for a second and then just looks like someone stepped on him. Guy just looks like his picture would appear if you looked up dejected in the dictionary. I feel a pang of guilt. But more importantly, I feel myself coming to my senses and my intuition, which has miraculously somehow finally kicked in, is saying get TF out. So I just make my way over to the door and tell him we'll hang another time. He's sort of slinking through the doorway out of the kitchen towards the hall where I'm standing at the front entrance. His movements look painful and awkward all of a sudden. Before he can get a chance to say anything else, I say talk to you later and peel out of there on my bike at max speed all the way home. Haven't been back since. Bro is not normal. Weirdly, he seemed kinda harmless, but I'm pretty sure he tried to get me to drink blood like it was Sunny D.
Do vampires exist? Yes. How do I know? Well, I am one. Clearing the supernatural stigma because, no, we are not immortal and we don't burst into flame when the sun hits our skin. We can't glam people and make them do our deeds, and we don't turn into bats or beasts. Everything of vampires can be explained by science. First off, it is indeed a virus or a blood disease, whatever you want to call it, that mutates the DNA. Once we awaken, our body vibrates at a much higher energy than humans, and we are constantly depleted of oxygen because of this. Fresh blood, however we get it, through drinking or transferring, replenishes our bodies. Unfortunately, it doesn't cure us and we always need more blood. I feed anywhere between 2 weeks to a month and I don't take much. If we don't feed enough and are depleted of new blood, our bodies weaken and our immunity is poor. It's like having the flu. Because vampirism is a mutation, our bodies are stronger, faster, and we are more agile. All our senses are heightened and a lot of us even have strong psychic abilities. I myself have exceptional hearing and am able to see fairly well in the dark. While the sun doesn't kill us right off, we are still sensitive to its effects. Our vitality is sapped. Some burn from exposure, while others, such as myself, are drained by the rays. In regards to immortality, while we aren't given everlasting life, we age slower and look better in our old age. I'm 32 now, but people still confuse me as being under 21.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.